folks. Welcome in. Welcome in. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all doing well on this fine Monday. One sec here. I'll get the microphone nice and close. What's up? Alpha Beta, how you doing? Laughly, good to see you. 3D Code Warrior, good to see you. Frankie, good to see you. Sophie, good to see you. Vamp, kind of okay to see you. Guys, I have so much news to cover today. I genuinely have so much news to cover today. I am pretty sure that I am not going to be able to keep up with chat. This might be one of those days where I just go on an infinite, never-ending chat with myself, and I just continue to cover the topics that we need to cover today, and I ignore chat for the most part. So, okay, you guys are going to have to take care of yourselves today. I am basically going to ignore the vast majority of you. I have my coffee. All right. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you had a good weekend. I will be, after the stream, I'll talk about what I've got coming up for the week, where I'm going to hang out, etc., etc. I do have intense emotions for Vamp. Vamp, I have a very confusing relationship with you. Because, look, this is a moment of weakness for me, all right? Before I get into this, a moment of weakness. I will say that Vamp is actually a cool guy. He comes on here and he says stupid stuff and whatever, and makes fun of me and whatever. But having talked to Vamp, he's a cool guy, all right? He is. This is the one and only time that you will hear me say anything good about Vamp. This is it. You will never hear me say anything good about Vamp, ever. Not ever again. It would take a minimum of a $50 super chat, and then I might say something nice about Vamp. But the price will only get higher the more that happens. Shut up, Vamp. Shut it. Shut your mouth. All right, let's get into it. I'm not going to be distracted by Vamp. Vamp can't derail me. I'm going to take a sip. We're going to get into it, boys. So today we have a whole mixture of news. We've got cybersecurity issues. We've got some scientific studies that I have to cover. I have to get on record. And then at the end, we're going to do continue the technocracy line. We're going to get all the way through to the 70s, which will then open the door for us to get through the 80s and 90s. And things are going to start to get wild. And I'm going to be honest. I just want you all to know, just all of you out there, I want you to know, I have never had any amount of serious thoughts of 404ing myself, all right? I love my life. I love my wife and kid. Things might be just a little bit difficult financially right now, but that's like the worst thing I can think of right now. Health is good. We have food on the table, everything. No, just, okay? I'm just putting that out there. All right, let's get to the news, shall we? Let me get this all going here. Oh, crap. Ah. Shit. I forgot I left this up there. I'm really sorry, folks. I'm really sorry. I didn't actually mean to do this. Here, let me, constantly balls to the face. I know, rat dick. I know. Okay. Let's go have a look at this study. Now, in this study, there's only a few things that I really want to bring up. So there's a kind of a somewhat more prevailing argument for AI proponents that if you use small language models, so as opposed to large language models, then you're going to be able to reduce the size of the model and its power consumption that you need. And I've started to look into the kind of the viability of using small language models, and they're also called like narrow AIs, to see whether that's true. Here's one of the first studies that I thought of bringing up. So what they did is they took small language models and they benchmarked them. And here's the sad part. They took 0.4b to 10b parameter models. We'll get into what the sizes mean. We'll just cover this kind of briefly and go over it. Essentially, compact small language models achieve competitive results while maintaining a balance between performance and efficiency, making them viable for deployment in resource-constrained environments. Okay, so far so good. However, achieving further improvements in accuracy requires switching to larger models. In other words, as part of this study, they hit an upper limit of these small language models. Anything beyond that would require you to have to step up to the large language models, thereby negating any possible benefits that you would get out of running a small language model, including power consumption. These models generally outperform their smaller counterparts, no duh, but they require much more computational power. We observed that for 10% performance improvements, okay, right here, models can require nearly a 4-time increase in VRAM consumption. The disparity between power consumption and performance gains when you have to go from small language models to large language models becomes wide, highlighting a trade-off between effectiveness and scalability. Besides, the multilingual performance analysis reveals that small language models tend to perform better in languages such as Python, Java, and PHP, while exhibiting relatively weaker performance in Go, C++, and Ruby. However, these differences are not significant. In other words, the language doesn't really make much difference. You're going to get basically the same performance output from your small language model as you are from the big language model. And when it comes to the 0.4b and 10b, those are parameters. Those are in terms of billions. So we're just going to go down here, and I just want you guys to have a look at two things. One is the kind of hardware that's required to even run these small language models that they ran for this study. You need a 20-core CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, and an NVIDIA L4, which has 24 gigs of RAM in it. The second piece of hardware was a 10-core CPU with 26 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 3090 with 24 gigs of RAM in it. That's to run the small language model. For what? Basically the same performance that you're going to get at the bottom level of the large language models. Well, that doesn't really say much about the small language models, does it? It's not a very, let's say, appealing argument. And just to go down a little bit over here, you can see that the parameter sizes, they kind of have a bunch of them all laid out here. This is essentially an indication of how smart the model is supposed to be. The idea being that the more parameters you have inside the model, the smarter this thing is going to be. So a small language model like one at the top here, polycoder 0.4 billion parameters, would be kind of like the least smartest. That's the intent here. And some of the big language, the large language models have like, now they have like 100 billion, 200 billion. So these small guys, just in terms of parameter size, obviously they can't really compete at the same level, right? So I thought this was a good start into exactly how these small language models operate, and they don't really operate that well. Now, digging into that a little bit more, I'm just going to keep going. LLMs on software development and developer productivity. We've already covered a study. It was a MITRE study, MITRE, I believe, that went over how the self-reported, what was it? Damn it. The outlook of developers in terms of their productive capacity increase using LLMs was thought to be self-reported an increase of 20% output in code generation, blah, blah, blah. It turns out it was negative 20%. It slowed them down more than anything. Now, let me make sure I have my notes pulled up here. I think, yes, I have a couple of things. So if we go down here, so essentially what they did here is looked at exactly what we're describing. Programmers who use LLMs, do they see benefits? And let's go down and get into some of the nitty gritty into what they discovered. They go over the methodology, yada, yada, yada. And so right around here. Okay, so they start saying like, yay, developers can prompt these models to come up with like, nice outputs for code. All right. Well, as it turns out, there are some serious issues. For example, you need more context. Right here, they start. Our survey findings suggest that the tools produce non-compilable code. Why? Because you need more context. What's more context? More computational power, which means you need to spend more money and you have to have more parameters and you have to have bigger models in order to get more context. So you immediately run into an upper limit scale or a lower limit scale, whatever you want to call it. It's a wall. Continuing on, testing, the automation of tests for code. A lot of them seem to be at the same level as human-made ones. In other words, not better. The tests that are generated out of these LLMs are not better than human-made tests. The issue, too, is that they then have pitfalls, like you can't even compile them. They're unreliable. They create out-of-scope tests, and they generate resource-intensive tests, which means your maximum level is that this stuff at the tune of 20-core CPUs and whatever, all the energy costs and all of that, barely produces anything that's equivalent to human-made tests. Blind trust in these tools also leads to less scrutiny of the auto-generated code. So there's a problem right away. Then they go over code review, monitoring, and maintenance. And as they dig into this, right, they go, how are people using the automatic what would you say, the hints that these systems pop up as you're coding? Well, users frequently do not notice the AI assistance available for specific code segments, which means you have this thing running and you don't even use it, right? Continuing on. Developers tend to invest additional time deciphering and rectifying the auto-generated code to ensure its functionality. So this is where the productivity decrease now really comes into play, because what it sends out often has a number of compilation errors, incomplete, bugs, etc., not enough context, and now you're now becoming a shepherd of code. You're not actually producing code. Then you have the domain of where these things are being used, and the LLMs and where they're being used for kind of like these programmatic systems has a very limited set of use cases, which means that we don't actually even know how this plays out on a vast array of code generation use cases. Then they have UI design. And this, I thought, was really interesting because it ties into technocracy. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. They go into, in this particular section here, well, we're taking away from the work of other artists and their designs and all of that. So we recommend that we use blockchain-backed AI-generated content to ensure authenticity. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Now, they go into quantum computing here, which again, we've already started covering. And in terms of quantum computing, they go, yeah, we don't really know how this plays out with quantum computing because there are no broad mainstream applications, which means quantum computing is just one of these theoretical things that still exists out there but has no real world usage. Then we have how many people actually use LLMs correctly as compared to their knowledge level. So they go into, obviously, LLMs are kind of, let's say, attractive for people who want to learn. The issue is that when you start to use AI to learn programming, then you start to begin to rely on its output instead of actually learning the thing. What's weird is that intermediate users kind of don't do anything. They don't really use it a lot, and they don't really not use it. As a matter of fact, when I dug into this, I found that there's not a lot of data about intermediate expert, intermediate knowledge, uh, programming knowledge, whatever, who use this. So this is kind of like a blank, like we don't really know what people at the intermediate level in programming are doing with these LLMs. Experts get the most benefit when there is benefit. However, they find the context switch very distracting. When it comes to collaboration, they find that there are some opportunities to lessen a few pain points that come with collaborating with other programmers. Okay, that's great. However, what happens is that, for example, when you're onboarding team members on your team, these LLMs don't have historical context. They don't have the broad access that they need to the entirety of your code base, historical chats that you've had, things like this. And so when you're trying to do cross collaboration or team onboarding, which they've gone into, or even just like doing multinational things like translating, like linguistics, etc., they very much fail because the LLMs need, guess what? They need more context in order to appropriately capture the benefits that you should be able to capture. And the idealistic scenario that these LLMs can do what they say they do, but they can't because you need more context. Now you're stuck in the cyclical loop. Now you have to pay more and inject more into it, etc. So here again, we have an upper limit or maybe a lower limit. Very quickly it devolves into uselessness. Now we have this. When developers have to use AI, it's not as easy as saying, hey, just go use AI and whatever you've learned about programming, you can just ask the AI and it will help you with it. No, no, no. Now what we have to do is right here. Developers must now understand the mental model of AI tools so that they can modify their commands and interactions to achieve the best outcome. So on top of already having to learn what they've had to learn, they now have to learn yet another paradigm. This is React all over again. Hey, you want to solve a problem? Use React, bro. It solves all your problems, bro. Virtual DOM, bro. Just use it, bro. You're too stupid to come up with your own solutions, bro. What do you want to do? Go back to assembly, bro? And so now you're trapped in the React paradigm. When there's a problem with that, you've learned React so much that you're trying to solve problems in React. You're learning React. You're not learning fundamentals. You're not learning what's actually going on. And this is why you see an explosion of React developers who don't even know what HTML is or how to write any of it. So as it continues here, okay, here we go. As it continues, the use of AI tends to lead to the inability to actually properly learn fully or holistically. And they do make some counterpoints here, which is in some cases, it has been observed that AI can help you learn things like with Khan Academy, which is an LLM-based platform. It can be good, right? But there are certain things where you hit those limits and then you suddenly stop learning the stuff that you should be learning. And now you're learning the system or how to circumvent the system to get to what you need, which detracts from your ability to get to the point where you need to go. So I do find this particular portion that they've had a fairly balanced and fair take, which is while there are some positives, there are also some negatives and some trade-offs, right? I don't actually agree with this take, because we've gone through many studies that show that this isn't actually how it plays out in reality, that for the most part, you vastly just learn nothing and you vastly remove stuff that you have learned, including your ability to learn. But, they did try to be fair, so I want to give them credit where credit is due. Let me make sure that I don't have anything else that I wanted to cover. They do say that there are numerous studies that show overall productivity has increased. We've gone over a lot of those. Those are self-reported. The ones that actually quantify actual productive output show that productivity actually decreases. This is all just, I feel like I'm being productive because I shortcut to an endpoint, or it's like the compilation thing back in the day when stuff would take forever to compile and you just like write some code and then wait 5 minutes for it to compile and you'd step back and go grab a coffee or whatever. And in some ways you might find that to be productive, but that's not really what's going on. Quality is definitely an issue. They can't work around that. They state that clearly. There are concerns about the quality of these outputs. Developers do not trust AI tools to generate a totally meaningful solution. Misinformation, hallucinations, etc. Privacy, we cover this all the time. Tools related to age, gender, race, and origin discrimination. So yes, apparently, developers are concerned about how AI has biases that would be considered politically incorrect. Then we have the unknowns. For example, are you importing code from like an open source project or something that has a license agreement that would prohibit you from using said code in the first place? And so you just import this. It's essentially the npm install problem, right? That's it. It's the npm install problem, or the pp install, or the composer install, or the rust crate install, where you're not 100% sure because it's just so easy to hit that sweet dopamine of just run a command and install a library to solve a problem. AI just automates that for you. There's a reliability problem, which is, do you get the same output every time for all the prompts that for the same prompt? No, you don't. There's training data quality issues. There's cognitive factors, including cognitive load, which they do say has a mixed impact, because you have several factors at play when you're using these things, on top of having to load in all of your programmatic, imperative processing, object-oriented, which object is related to which, and inheritance and clean code and all of it. And now you have all of this stuff where you have to double check and triple check and quadruple check. Your cognitive load actually expands, which actually makes you want to opt out and get frustrated way easier than normal. Empirical evidence suggests that users often find these tools perplexing and not easy to navigate. And so there is a very real problem where the amount of effort that is required to adequately use these tools, if you could even get there, is just too high. So there we go with that study. I wanted to make sure that I covered that a little bit more comprehensively, and particularly because people who say that they can vibe code their way through anything with these models are basically just lying. A lot of this is just self-reported output, right? Okay, next study. I'm just going to power through. We're powering through, boys. I don't care what chat's saying. I see you popping up over there. I don't even care. What's up, everybody? If I didn't say hi to you, I'm saying hi to you now, all right? Let me take a sip of coffee. I hope you're all doing well. We got to run through, otherwise this stream will take forever. Okay, let me make sure I have my notes pulled up for this one. Perfect. Okay, this one should be a quick one. Large-scale, independent, and comprehensive study of the power of LLMs for test case generation. So they go over how it is promising. Existing research lacks comprehensive evaluation, and so they hope that they can prove that there's some usefulness to it. Our findings challenge prior claims that in-context learning is ineffective for test generation. Reasoning-based prompts, particularly GTOT, particularly enhances test reliability, resulting in, good stuff. However, oh, there's a caveat. What's the caveat here, folks? The caveat is the following. However, hallucination-driven failures, incorrect API calls, and fabricated dependencies resulting in what? What? I can't hear you, study. You want to say it louder for the back? It results in high compilation failure rates up to 86%. Tell me, how much money would you pay to have any developer of any expert level, low to high, generate test cases that fail at compilation 86% of the time? And yet we're going to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on this shit, and we're going to power it with nuclear power, and we're going to suck up all the water that people desperately need, and we're going to, over blow the power grid and make everybody pay 20% higher costs for this shit. Are you kidding me? This is insanity. Okay, execution-based classification and mutation testing reveal that many failing tests stem from hallucinated dependencies, limiting effective fault detection. Now, let me tell you something else. If this is happening, we have already gone over the slop squatting thing. We've covered that very, very well. We've put a nice little bow on that slop squatting system. And you know what happens when these systems when these systems hallucinate dependencies? There are nefarious actors out there who love it. Why do they love it? Because they can prompt these systems to create those same test cases. And then they go, hey, does this dependency exist? No, let me create it. And I'm going to inject what? Malware in it. And now your 86% failing test cases now have malware that steal all your data at the same time. People have absolutely lost their mind. They've lost their mind on this shit. It's really bad. So there we go. There was a quick one. If you want to look up the study, I will have links to it on my Enlightened Programming website later. Let's keep going. Okay, now, if you remember, we're going to start tying this a little bit into just a little bit of the technocratic stuff. If you remember, I believe it was on Friday. No, it was on Saturday. I did a daily tech news stream. And we covered Margaret Mead, who historically was quite involved in the technocratic movement. And part of the things that she wanted to kind of push, because she herself was supposedly bisexual, or something along these lines. It was not really confirmed, but she hinted it herself in her own autobiography. And so she used technical methods, scientific and technical ecosystems, including technocracy, to inject kind of her ideology and help promote it. It wasn't just her, it was many others. Now, I want to be really careful. I'm going to go over some studies where we're going to start broaching this topic in modernity, but I want to be clear that unless I explicitly state a personal opinion on this, and some of you will know my opinion, the point here is not whether you have a hard preference for this kind of, let's say, perception of the world, or you have a hard preference against it. My point in bringing it up is trying to kind of remove myself from the actual reporting of the phenomenon as it applies to the programming field. So we're going to go into these studies, and I would ask that you try and be careful. I don't want to encourage people to just start trash talking, people who fall in these categories, or, slinging mud around, at least for the sake of my channel, if you care about what you're doing, but also because according to terms of service, if one of my mods discovers that you are breaking terms of service, which means that you do have to respect certain rules, I will be forced to ban you. And I myself have to also be very careful. Okay. So the point of bringing up these studies, again, I want to be really fucking clear, is that regardless of the ideology behind it, whether it's left or right, conservative or liberal, progressive or not progressive, religious or atheist, whatever it is, the point that I harp on over and over again is that when it comes to code as it is executed on hardware, it does not care. Okay, so the code we generate does not care about your ideology and your worldview. And we've lost sight of that, and it's made it so that we cannot properly deal with the concept of what code is under the hood. I will say that the reason why I do these technocracy streams is because there is a long history of using technology to embed in a form of a Trojan horse ideology and make that spread. And in modernity, we see that play out in great, vast battlefields. Okay, so let's bring up this one. And I won't cover these in full again. I will try and go through them as fast as I can. We'll start here. Impostor phenomenon, or otherwise known as impostor syndrome, among software engineers investigating gender differences and well-being. Let me pull up my notes here. Okay. So there's two particular things that I wanted to bring up here. So one of them is, so this is a survey done by against 624 people. This is self-reported because imposter syndrome kind of can't be anything else but self-reported. And so the idea behind imposter syndrome is like you don't feel like you belong there, for a variety of different reasons, whatever it might be. And so you kind of second guess yourself and your own qualifications and whatnot, right? So they found that there is definitely a kind of like a gendered difference across the field of programming, but even just in general, in workplaces in general. So what are those gender differences? Well, they have some charts here. We're just going to look at a few things. So here we go. Okay, I just want you to have a look, right? So in Brazil, these are people who experience self-reported imposter syndrome. Men overwhelmingly experience this, okay, followed by women and then other genders. And in Brazil, it's particularly worse, okay? As we continue, we'll notice a few things. So if you are any gender, you experience it quite a bit, right? If you are men, just across the board, right, then you experience it just a little bit less than most. Women, though, across the board. So I want to be clear. There's a difference between per country, right? At country level, you're going to have a difference between men and women, right? This is just across the board. Doesn't matter where you live. Just across the board, men experience it the least, regardless of where they live. It just so happens that in Brazil, it's pretty bad, right? So then women experience it quite a bit. And then other genders, although their number is small, 14 compared to the hundreds up above, experience it the most. Okay. And then they start going into race. Okay. So if you are Black, you're feeling it pretty hard. All right. If you're other, you're doing okay. If you're white, in terms of like a white man, you're the least impacted by imposter syndrome here. Okay, let's keep going, right? If you are single, you experience it way more than if you're married. It's a huge variance. If you have children, the more children you have, the less you experience it. Now, this is correlated a little bit to age. They did try to account for it here. So if I can't remember exactly where it is, but you'll have to take my word for it or just go look up the study. Essentially, they said, we thought that maybe the reason for this is because people who are married and have more children tend to be older, and so they tend to be more settled in their life. As it turns out, that's not exactly true. Regardless of age group, the variance between them is very little. Simply being married and having children gives you some kind of, I don't know what, because obviously that's not what they really go into here, but it gives you some kind of grounding, let's say, that allows for you to maybe feel imposter syndrome a little bit less across the board. I'm not sure what that is, but I thought I'd bring it up. We will dig into it a bit more. Let's continue down this line, okay? Next study. All right. Now, studies like this are not doing anybody any favors. Breaking barriers, investigating the sense of belonging among women and non-binary students in software engineering. Overall, this study does indeed bring up some points, like barriers that people have, threats that they have to overcome, and historical kind of, I don't know, discriminatory viewpoints. There is indeed some portion of the world where men, for example, will look down on women as kind of like not being able to accomplish work as well as a woman does. That 100% happens. It's a real thing. The degree to which it happens is an argument to be made. I am not here to make this argument, but what I am here to talk about is how these kinds of studies bundle in an ideological background. And so their basis is that they take in ideology that exists kind of in like a different ecosystem, and they say this ideology and the beliefs of this ideology is the reason why it happens. And what you essentially do is you prime people, particularly women and non-binary students here, you prime them to believe that they cannot properly function in the world out of their own merit, that your own merit, your ability to put forward the work that you are capable of putting forward, it is hampered from the beginning. So you prime a person to think this way, and I can see this in this study. I just wanted to bring up this one point. Let me have a look here. I think it's my intersectionality. Yes. And so here we have it here. The discrimination that those with intersecting marginalized identities face is explained by a theory called intersectionality. This can also be found in studies about STEM fields, such as the one that found that women of color in STEM experience a double blind of race and gender-based discrimination, potentially leading to feelings of isolation, exclusion, and a lack of sense of belonging. They also found that women of color in STEM often have to navigate negative stereotypes and assumptions about their abilities and competence, which can undermine their confidence and self-esteem. And they continue down this line, LGBTQ, etc., etc. This primes people when they read stuff like this to accept that there's somehow some deeply, systemic kind of oppression that comes at them out of the gate. However, there are a lot of questions behind the studies that supposedly prove this, including how many of these studies are self-reported senses of feeling discrimination as opposed to actual quantitative discrimination. This would be a corollary example or like a related example would be something like how many developers feel like they're being productive using an LLM versus actually being productive using an LLM. And when we dig into that, we find that the disparity is definitely worth considering, right? And the reason why I want to bring this up is this particular one is because I'm going to pull on a thread that I don't think anybody has picked up on. There is actually, I'll drop a little bit of a hint right now. There is actually a very good place that people are missing out for women in tech. And they are very well suited. And I'm making a generalization. There are always exceptions to this rule. I don't think anybody has picked up on this. So I'm going to be pulling on that thread as well as we continue the daily tech news streams here. But we're going to be looking at these studies and we're going to be focusing on how ideology is being driven into these things. And I do have some ideological stuff coming up that also comes from the opposing worldview, by the way, where the opposing worldview to these kinds of worldviews also want to embed their ideology into the technical landscape. So we will be doing that, all right? Okay, now, those are the studies. So the studies are done. So the boring stuff is, it's over. I appreciate everybody who is respecting TOS. Okay. I know that there are different kinds of views out there, and I'm trying to be as careful as I can be to navigate the issues, because there are some good issues to cover, and I have personal opinions too, and I have to be careful what I say, right? But there's some stuff to get here. It's not all doom and gloom, and there's some positive stuff out of these things, okay? Let me make sure that I don't have any more studies. One sec. No. Covered that. I think all the science ones are done. Okay, let's get through this here. We're going to do some cybersecurity issues. 1. I believe I've covered this before. I don't remember. In case I haven't, make sure that you do not download any file on Windows with the extension .hta. It will run JavaScript that bypasses Windows threat detection mechanisms, and then it will execute a PowerShell script that does all kinds of malicious stuff. There is an example here of it being used. Anything that is .hta is equivalent to a legacy style HTML file, which can run and bypass security checks, okay? So be careful of that. We have this one, Vercel. Vercel has an AI-powered UI generator called V0. What you do is you prompt it to create a website UI so that you don't have to worry about the design. It does it using React and Tailwind and a bunch of other stupid crap that you should never do, not even once. Look up my video on YouTube. Don't do Tailwind, not even once. You will recognize it by the clown face. So what hackers and other nefarious actors are doing here is they're using this system to generate very convincing replicas of websites that act as phishing websites so that you give over your credentials or you log in or things like this, and then they capture those credentials. So AI is just going to help, benefit these nefarious actors to the point where you're not going to be able to tell the difference, at least not from a passive glance. You'd have to be very careful. You'd have to look at, what URL it is, etc., etc. So this is going to only escalate. Now, in a related topic to this, I haven't brought it up yet, and I think I don't have it in today because I think I remember why. The UK, I'll switch over. The UK is implementing an Online Privacy Safety Act, okay? What they're doing is they're making it so that you have to provide ID verification for a bunch of stuff that they consider harmful. In a future stream, we're actually going to read that act and we're going to go and look at what they consider to be harmful, etc. Unfortunately, what's happening is that there are companies that are generating websites that have the request for you to give it your ID as verification, pretending to be a website under this law. Does that make sense? They're pretending that they're part of they're one of these websites that are acting under the the governance of the Online Safety Act in the UK. And then guess what happens? You pull out your passport or your driver's license or whatever national ID you have, you submit it, and now these websites have your personal information. I'm seeing reports of this, so I'm kind of sitting on that. But you can see how using the the Vercel's V0 or other AI generated tools would help promote that. So we'll cover that in the future. Let's keep going. Google is slapped, okay, with a $314 million fine for misusing customers' data. Do you know why? In the state of California, it was found that Google was transferring and receiving information from Android devices while they were idle without users' consent. You know what Google said? Don't worry, bro. Don't worry, bro. It's harmless. Nobody was harmed using these practices, and users consented to it in the company terms and service and privacy policies anyways. The jury agreed with the plaintiff's complaint that Google used customers' data to send and receive information from their devices when they weren't connected to a Wi-Fi network. Google allegedly used this information for its own benefit, offering targeted advertisements and enhancing its mapping capabilities. Now, that means that they're going to have to pay for that, all right? $314 million fine. But I just want you to be aware that if Google is doing this with your phone while it's off, what are they doing with the data that you send to AI systems as you continue to use them? Just something to consider there. We have the next one, Cat Watchful. Data breach reveals Cat Watchful's stalkerware is spying on thousands of phones. There is a bug which spills the spyware app's full database of email addresses and plain text passwords. What is this app? Now, primarily Mexico, Colombia, India, Peru, Argentina, Ecuador, and Bolivia. What's Cat Watchful? I had to go look this up. It's a child monitoring app. Yeah, that's right. Cat Watchful is a child monitoring app. Okay. However, it's stalkerware. So be careful out there with what you're installing, okay? Because it leaks all this information. It's used for stalking. It's used to leak private information. People think that they can monitor their kids, in some way or another. I don't know. The API was unauthenticated, exposing sensitive user data such as email and passwords. It uses a custom API in Google's Firebase, which is equivalent to an S3 bucket. Have a look beneath me. We're at minus 9999 days. That's going to stay there indefinitely. I'm done switching the stupid, days, whatever. We're done with that. So there you go. Be careful of that. Now, Idea Lab, in case this matters to you, I'm just going to bring it up for attention. Idea Lab confirms data stolen in ransomware attack last year. Idea Lab is a California-based company started in 1996. It's launched over 150 companies like CitySearch, eToys, Pet.net, etc., etc. In 2024, they had an intrusion into their network, and 262 gigabytes of files were taken. That's 137,000 files. The person who took the files did send out a sample, put it up on a website called Hunters International, but the owners of Hunters International apparently turned over a new leaf, and they're like, you know what? We're going to shut down the site. We don't like where this is going. So everything gets shut down. So right now, this data is kind of in limbo. In case this matters to you, just be careful out there. Keep an eye on your identity and make sure nobody's doing anything bad with that. Okay. We have this one. Do you think that when you delete a branch on Git, it goes away? Nope. Hacker analyzes deleted data on GitHub, scores 25K in bug bounties. The short of it, someone created a scanner that goes through your deleted GitHub branches, and they're not really deleted. They just sit there. And so what he found is a whole bunch of leaked credentials exposed in environment files. And here is kind of the, let's see if we can zoom out here. Here is the amount, okay, of files that he found broken down by the file type, where he found secrets and keys exposed. Now, what that means for you as a consumer is that it is really, really easy for someone to scan a place where people store code and they think that it's theirs, it's like up there and secure. And instead, it's not secure at all. And these keys give them access to back-end services like database that hold your consumer data. This is the state of the tech industry today, where you can just build an automated scanner that finds supposedly deleted GitHub branches or supposedly secure code that's been deleted, and they can just find access to all kinds of systems, and then you have consumer data being leaked all over the place. So again, be careful out there, and how about this? Maybe stop using GitHub. Maybe stop using GitHub. Yeah. Next. US busts another North Korean cybercrime ring. This is fantastic. I'm glad to see stuff like this. This is an additional one to a previous one we've covered before. The North Korean group was able to gain access to over 100 different companies in the US. They had 29 financial accounts and 29 suspected laptop farms. They jailed certain people they charged and jailed certain people who operated inside of the US, managing the laptop farms, so that they could have US like IP addresses and homes. They stole a bunch of identities, more than 80 people in the US. They got access to a bunch of Fortune 500 organizations. And they also did this to people from, with the use of people from China and Taiwan, not just North Korea. So I'm glad that this got shut down. This is a good bit of good news. Sad that it took, that they got in as far as they did, but there you go. Linux can be hacked with a USB stick. Be careful with Linux. There is an issue with init RAM FS, I believe, so you can bypass the boot with a USB stick. Yeah, there we go. There's an abuse of the shell via the initial RAM file system, which is temporarily used by the kernel during boot to access drivers and other files to load the OS. Attackers would only need brief physical access to bypass boot protections and inject persistent malware into systems. And so then they can enter into like whatever shell they need to, and then make whatever adjustments that they want to make, nefarious acts, etc., etc. There's a whole step-by-step process on how it works. Please do be careful out there. Fortunately, it does require physical access. You have to pop in a USB stick in order to do it, or something like this. But you could see how this could lead to, say, people coming up with other ways to bypass that. All right. We have one more. Telefonica. I've been waiting to see if there's been an update on this. There isn't. They are sticking to their story. Telefonica says that there is no data breach, but a hacker claims that there is. And they have dropped a little bit of the sample data that they've received, a total of 106 gigs of data from Telefonica. They dropped 5 gigs of data as proof, and it's a total of 385,311 files. It includes internal communication like tickets and emails, purchase orders, invoices and business partners, internal logs, customer records, and employee data. So it's probably like a 3 out of 10 on the Krispy Kreme scale. But Telefonica is saying, nah, it didn't happen, bro. Didn't happen. They didn't acknowledge the breach. So this is from July 7th. It's been a long time, almost the end of the month. And I'm like, well, maybe Telefonica will come out and admit to it or something. So far, as far as I can tell, nothing. So there you go. Just in case, like you've used Telefonica before, be careful that this is out there. Okay. We are going to do a little bit of a different one, and then we're going to get into technocracy. We'll briefly cover this, which I think is a very interesting topic to cover, which is the state of the tech industry and how things are built these days. Let's just cover this really briefly. I don't think it's actually as relevant today as it was in 2022, but there's this person who wrote a blog post, Bruce Dawson, September 29, 2022. He made a blog post here about Windows Voice Recorder. And he noticed that there was a huge delay in Windows Voice Recorder loading up and starting. He wanted to record himself talking about something. And so then he did kind of a deep dive. So for the people who are not programmers, you can just kind of glaze over this for a minute. We'll just cover this briefly. I thought it was a very good kind of like a deeper dive into what the hell Windows is doing in 2022 with something as simple as Windows Voice Recorder. So he started it up. There was a long delay before it would respond. A 20-second delay for recording a 40-second clip is a pretty bad efficiency ratio. He pulled up an ETW trace. An ETW trace is a way to kind of break down all the different components in the Windows system that are running as you're running like one of these executables. So what he did is he found soundrec.exe, and then they verbosely named runtime broker.exe. I was kind of tongue-in-cheek, Microsoft Windows Sound Recorder. Looking at its CPU usage, I noticed that it got busy as soon as I launched it before I clicked the record button. Why? There was something happening that was CPU bound, spending most of its time on a single thread that was busy performing queries on the results of a crawl over some directory. And so here you can kind of see the breakdown of what it was doing. So then he looks at the file IO graph. What's it looking for? It was a bit inconsistent, but it was scanning part or all of my documents directory. Meanwhile, another runtime broker thread was spending a bit of time in process.dll, try get file type association from state repository. What the hell is this? So it was trying to find all audio files in the documents folder so that it could list all the previous recordings, as can be seen right over here, right? So as it's doing that, there was a significant delay. That's where the delay came from. Once you allowed for the list of recordings to build up, which means that these processes finished, the scan was done, then the recording would start instantly. And then he has some sarcasm that I really, really enjoyed here. Clearly, this was a case of user error. If I had waited patiently for my slow computer to be ready, then it would have been fast and responsive when I wanted to start recording. Of course, right? So How on earth is it okay for this kind of a system to take 20 seconds, anywhere between 20 to 40 seconds, to scan your documents directory in order to find associated recordings? That's insane. And he proves this, right? If he runs dir/s on his documents directory, it takes less than 2 seconds. Why is Runtime Broker taking 5 to 10 times more in order to scan it? There's 44,000 files. That should be nothing. Why does Runtime Broker scan the entire documents directory instead of just like the sound recordings file or folder, right? What happens when users don't have an SSD with 32 gigs of RAM? In my case, he says right here, the entire structure of my documents directory was entirely cached in memory, so there was zero disk activity required to do the scan. But some users are not so lucky, especially if you got to spin that disk to get to the right point. When doing an operation that blocks the user from using the application when a progress meter or busy cursor would be more honest. So instead of just freezing the app, why don't you just show that there's something happening, right? Record, for example, disable the record button until it's ready. Why does the scan of documents directory sometimes not traverse the entire directory? Is there Runtime Broker caching? So he breaks this down really, really nicely. And you know what I thought particularly interesting? Just really briefly before we jump into technocracy here, just really interesting. The Hacker News article here is just really funny. So we have, like, right up at the front here, alternative hypothesis, brace yourselves. People don't care enough. Any vendor will prioritize requirements if performance is not there. That CPU and memory is going to be used if in any way it helps the developers. Conversely, by looking at a system, you can infer its requirements. For commercial airplanes, it may be safety first, ticket price second, passenger capacity, fuel efficiency, and speed third. For most software functionality, signing up for a subscription, platform availability, etc., are usually prioritized higher than response time and keyboard shortcuts. Game devs worry a lot about latency and frame rates, and professional software care a lot about keyboard shortcuts. This proves anecdotally that performance isn't achievable at all, but isn't unachievable, but rather deprioritized. Nobody actually wants slow apps. It's just that developer velocity metrics are higher priorities, and it comes with the CPU and memory costs that the vendor doesn't care about. To consumers out there, you know what this is saying? Vote with your dollar. Stop accepting this shit. Stop buying this crap and start complaining. If something is slow and buggy, don't just go like, oh, this is just how it is. No, consumers out there, please. You don't have to know anything about programming. I beg of you, complain as much as you can. Try to avoid spending your money on stupid, buggy, slow, insecure shit as much as you possibly can. Because then these people who prioritize the ads and subscriptions and, shipping it out fast and whatever are going to change their tune, and you're going to get a much better product out of it. I guarantee you. So please, as consumers, and that includes programmers, vote with your dollar and complain. And now I don't know if Gare Games is on because I'm not paying attention to chat, but Gare Games, in case you're on, I just thought this was a really interesting one. I'm just going to read it, then we're going to jump into technocracy, okay? I'm a game developer, and game performance is better than ever. It's better than ever, Gare Games. 144 hertz monitor, 4K, we got you covered, bro. Even ray tracing and VR is on the way. Most games render frames of a 3D world in less than 17 milliseconds, but most websites take 3 to 7 seconds to load because of all the ads and bloats, but things shift around on you for another 20 seconds after that. So, when you go to tap a link, you accidentally tap an ad that finally loaded under your finger. If you optimize those websites, they run super fast though, but it's quite a pain to do with the dependency bloat in modern tech stacks. Note, games lag as well when you drag in a million dependencies you don't need. The thing is, most sites and web apps try to solve a user problem, and if you're the only company in town that solves a problem, then performance barely matters. What matters is solving the problem. The users will put up with some pain because the problem is even more painful. With games, it's all about the experience of interacting with the software, so performance is, hopefully, depending on your team and budget, amazing. That, and performance tuning is hard work, and I think most people don't know much about it. It's a fractal rabbit hole. Cache misses, garbage collector, streaming, object pooling, dealing with stale pointers, etc. Even I have a ton to learn, and no matter how much I learn, I probably still will have a lot more to learn. It's easier for many teams to hand wave it, I guess, as long as they aren't losing too many customers because of it. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there, all right? Now, let me take a break so that I can take a sip of coffee, all right? I'm sure Gary Games has a lot to say about that. But I thought I'd just bring that up. The state of the tech industry, boys. Let's get into technocracy, shall we? We're going to get into technocracy, but you know what we're going to start with? Just as a nice soft lead in to technocracy, you know what we're going to do it? We're going to talk about AI sex robot brothels. How about that? Now, again, I have to self-censor what I show a lot. There are things that I cannot show on stream. If you go on enlightenedprogramming.com, if you have ever supported me financially, you've subbed on Twitch, you've done a super chat, you've sent in money, through the tip, bank tip and chat, whatever, you'll have access to it. And I will put links in there that I cannot show you here. I actually can't even put it on Discord. I believe the links would break Discord terms of service. And I'm trying to, avoid that, right? So I'm going to have to very much self-censor a bunch of pictures and images, which means you're going to have to see my face a little bit more than you'd like, but let's get into it. We're going to start with AI sex robot brothels. And then this is going to lead nicely into technocracy transhumanism. Let's begin. First, let's start with this. Okay, let me pull this up, and I have to first check. This is going to be, it's going to be rough, boys. It's going to be rough to do this. All right. Frickin' hell. I have to be really careful. Shit. All right. I'm going to try my best here. I got to have my finger on the button here. Okay. This is from The Sun. How the dangerous rise of perfect AI girlfriends is ruining entire generation of men and making singles more lonely. Experts have warned that AI robots will soon replace human partners. I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to be very careful, okay? I don't think there's anything here that's particularly bad, all right? But here you go. Hey, will you be my girlfriend? Yes, honey, I'm here for you. I love you. You're the best woman in my life. AI, I love you too. I will be with you for the rest of my life. Now I have to jump back. Okay, and I have to make sure that I'm not... Okay, so so here's a picture that I can't really show fully, all right? AI-generated girlfriends can be photorealistic on some platforms, but still have telltale giveaways that they aren't real. Okay, now I have to jump back out, all right? Okay, here's another one, right, where you can do customizations, all right? You can customize your AI girlfriend. Now I have to jump back out. Okay, here's one that's completely, it's fine. We can do this, right? And so this is just another, a different, you can adjust their proportions to make them perfect, etc., etc. Okay, now I have to jump back out. Okay, so let's read this a bit. I think we're at a good point here. AI services now create fully interactive girlfriends for their users. What happens is that the line between real and virtual relationships is getting blurred. AI girlfriends are becoming more like physical beings. They are almost indiscernible from a real human. They look like real people. They're shockingly good when it comes to replacing human interactions. Physical AI robots that can satisfy humans emotionally and sexually will become a stark reality in less than 10 years. We're about to get into, I'm going to show you some shit. It's here. Artificial girlfriends operate through sophisticated algorithms and AI technologies designed to simulate human interaction and companionship. These systems allow virtual chatbots to offer realistic and context-aware conversations and even gauge the emotional tone of the conversation. Through machine learning, AI girlfriends can continuously improve their ability to understand what their users want, adapt to individual personalities, and refine their conversational skills. I must now at this point jump back here and go down. On the top of it, developers design a virtual persona for the artificial girlfriend with a personality, interests, preferences. The persona is integrated into the AI systems to provide an authentic and tailored experience. AI girlfriend is not just a virtual partner. It is intelligence that feeds and learns on data it receives. It learns what you like, what you don't like. It articulates its responses accordingly. We have covered this topic quite a bit with people falling in love with their AI girlfriends or boyfriends, marrying them, having such visceral emotional attachments to them, that the idea of the AI assistant or their romantic AI partner going away makes them break down into tears. They have like an existential crisis. They like inject this AI model into pictures as they are running around in real life. It's absolutely crazy and insane, and this is only getting worse. And what's happening is it's feeding a loneliness epidemic, because if you are someone who already has social interaction problems, how likely are you to overcome those social interaction problems if you're going to integrate interact, with these AI systems that are sycophantic and make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside? Well, of course you're not, which means we're going to see a dramatic decrease in the amount of social interaction, which means our society is cooked if this continues. Fortunately, I don't think it will continue for much longer. I hope. That's what I think. I think these things have hit a wall and they're going to start breaking down quite soon. And I hope I see the tears and people start talking to each other again. It's really important, okay? Go out there and make human interactions, please. It's super fucking important, okay? Go out and meet your neighbors, meet friends. It doesn't matter whether you agree with all of their points or views or whatever or not. Human interaction is vastly underrepresented. Go out and do that. Please, please do that. If nothing else, I proved it at the beginning of the stream. You want to suffer from less imposter syndrome? Go get married and have kids. Okay? Do that. Okay, let me make sure there's nothing else here. You don't have a naggy AI wife, who nags you and is grumpy and stuff, yada, yada, and men like that. Okay, and so here you go. Look. As technology gets better, people will soon have AI robots to replace human partners. They will be able to satisfy men both emotionally and sexually. And when that starts to happen, married men with kids will begin to leave their families to embrace their ideal relationships with AI girlfriends. We have already seen this happen. This is already happening. And you can see people leave their families for this. For this. I have to jump back out now. I can't show that picture. I really can't show that picture. Okay, this one's fine. I can show this. Look at this. She doesn't even look real, man. Why? Why would you leave? Why would you leave your family and kids? You have a family and kids. You have one of the most rewarding things that life can give you, and you want to leave it for this? What the actual ever-living fuck? I have to jump back out again. Okay, so that article is done. Let's go on to the next article. Oh, crap. Screwed that up. Damn it. Shit. Professional streamer. There is a word I don't even know I can show. I'm going to have to be really, I'm not even sure if Terms of Service will let me show the word, depending on which stream I'm on. I'm not going to say the word, and I'm going to hope that the people who are watching, who might be, watching this, are understanding that I'm showing from a news article. This is The Guardian. This is like a highly trusted, in terms of news. Anyways, it's from a mainstream news article. Okay. I'm just presenting the news here. Okay. But I'm not going to say the word. So here we go. This is from The Guardian. It's about a month old. Online brothels, sex robots, simulated AI is ushering in a new age of violence against women. Okay. So now this article is full of stuff I can't show. We're going to skip through. All right. So the idea here, let's start with this. Okay. I can show this. You see this? This was in Vegas for a pornography conference full of degenerates. And this is an AI robot that they showcased in Vegas as an up-and-coming thing that's going to play out in the field of pornography. All right? Now I have to jump back out. Okay. The idea here is, let me just scroll down. We didn't need to read all of that. Okay. So the article begins with talking about how people are rushing headlong into AI, right? And how a lot of companies are refusing to sign the ethical and safe approach to these things. It's worth asking who is benefiting from the headlong rush and at whose expense. One developer, who only goes by the name Lore in their communications with the media, described the open source release of the large language model Llama as creating a gold rush type of scenario. He used Llama to build Chub AI, a website where users can chat with AI bots and roleplay violent and illegal acts. For as little as $5 a month, users can access a brothel staffed by girls below the age of 15, described on the site as a world without feminism. Or they can chat with a range of characters, including Olivia, a 13-year-old girl with pigtails wearing a hospital gown, or Reiko, your clumsy older sister, who is described as constantly having sexual accidents with her younger brother. Now, I gotta jump again, down a little bit down. Let me make sure. Fuck, I don't know if I can. Okay, I'll read it, but I'll have to skip some words. All right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to highlight it, and you guys are gonna have to do your own reading. I'm really fucking trying here, guys. I really am. Fucking hell. I'm taking a huge risk here. Here we go. Sex robots are being developed at breakneck speed. Already, you can buy a self-warming, self-lubricating, or sucking model. Some manufacturers have dreamed up a frigid setting that would allow their users to simulate, a violent act. Millions of men are already using AI companions, virtual girlfriends available and subservient 24/7, whose breast size and personality they can customize and manipulate. Meanwhile, generative AI, which has exploded in popularity, has been proven to regurgitate and amplify misogyny and racism. This becomes significantly more of a concern when you realize just how much online content will soon be created by this new tool. Jump back to this. They talk about how women are at risk. There's some stuff that I can't show. There's the patriarchal objectification of women. And now look, regardless of whether you think, honestly, just put aside like feminism bad, patriarchy bad, just put that aside for a minute. You cannot deny the fact that there are people out there who are so fucking degenerate that they will absolutely goon and love this. They are goon coomers who will love acting out their insane fantasies, whether they are feminists or not feminist, whether they are patriarchal, Christian national, just put aside the belief system and the worldviews, please, for a minute, and consider that it almost doesn't matter, that this shit attracts all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. You just don't want this to exist, plain period. And unfortunately, it enhances things like racism. If you're already racist, which yes, there are absolutely racist people out there. There are absolutely degenerate scumbags who like to have, people who are not of age, etc. You know what I'm trying to say here, right? These people fucking exist. Of course, it's going to be attractive to them and they're going to want to do it. This stuff just makes sense. We really have to, we have to be careful. Now, they go into a little bit, they kind of bundle in a lot of the stuff that I don't like them bundling in, which is like, well, the worst affected people are the people who are like feminists and women of color and stuff. And it's like, okay, yes. Okay. I understand it, but now you're just bundling it. You are actually the article here is bundling in an ideological bend to it. And I just don't care for that. It just primes you to think that way from the beginning. Like I said, now, what they do bring out is that there is a consequence of this. Okay. So once you get past their political leaning that they try and inject into this thing, let's just skip past that. There is unfortunately a consequence that we really do have to consider, which is, I can't read this exactly, but it says the results are devastating. Young women have taken their own lives after experiencing sexualized cyberbullying. And the linked article, which I can't really bring up, this is all super risky stuff. Some of it stems from people who feel confident after they interact with these AI chatbots, whatever, and they go and behave this way even more. Okay. That is a very real thing. It honestly doesn't happen as much as you might think, which is a good thing, but having it happen even once is absolutely like, I just don't accept that, right? It's a bad thing. Okay. Now, the thing continues. Yes. Okay. This is bad, etc. Now, how does this actually play out? Shit. I have to pull up this next link. Fucking hell, how am I going to do this? Am I okay to show this? Oh, fuck, I can't show that. Crap. Okay, I think look. Okay, before I show this website, what I want to show is here. Okay, how about this? I'm going to be really clear. If you see this and you go, "Thanks, Spiro, for showing me where to get this shit," fuck you right to hell. Okay? Just to be clear, fuck you right to hell. You're a degenerate scumbag. And the point of me showing this is not for you to go and do the thing. The point of me showing this is to show you how far this has come in modernity. You guys need to be aware about what the fuck is going on out there. I can't scroll down very much. I have to be super fucking careful. This is Real Doll. Let's like this, okay? Now, as you can see, it is a handmade product. I can't even zoom in, otherwise images pop up that I can't show, okay? You zoom in, you create your own doll. It's handmade. You get a different kind of body. I can't even click on the options, and I will very carefully scroll down, and you can see you can adjust the eye, the makeup. It might be hard to tell on screen. I apologize. I can't zoom in. I can't touch this. Hair, style, breast options, other things, okay? Extras. I can't go any further. $8,000 approximately to get this thing, okay? So I'm going to scroll back up very carefully. So this already exists. I'm literally just going to take this out. Now, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this next one, okay? Shit. It's right on the front page. I'm worried about even putting this on. Fuck. What do I do? What do I do? Okay. How about this? If I do, okay, here's what I can do. Okay, again, I just want to be clear. Fuck you if you use this, all right? This comes from a website. I won't even say the website, okay? But you can think of it like Real Doll. I'm just not even going to say the website. But I'm just going to pop this open and you guys can see how far this is taken in terms of customizing your own AI sex bot. I'm just leaving this up here for a minute. I'm just gonna leave it. So you can see how detailed this stuff gets. Okay, now I'm going to switch back. Okay, and the last link, I have to take this down, okay? The last link I have is that China is leading the way. And, fucking hell. I again have to be careful what I show. This is from the BBC. Will it even play? Shit. Will it even play? Let me try this. Okay, this'll play. This is gonna suck. All right. I'm going to have to do the jumping back and forth again, boys. I'm sorry, but it's just the way this is going to have to be. So we have the China creating AI powered sex dolls. Here's a mass manufacturing company. I now have to jump back, and we're going to jump ahead to a few points. Let me do, okay. So they do things like over here, they put skeleton as foam muscle, right? Right? They have 160 parts. There's robotic stuff that they build, yada yada yada. Now I have to jump back. Okay, and so here you go. This is kind of like, let me play this a bit. I'll have to be very careful. Right? And so here it is, the kind of like the skeletal output. Now I have to jump back. Here's the mass manufacturing of them, right? And so they have like just a warehouse where they build them. Okay, now I have to jump back. And I can't show that. I actually can't show that. I'm reading from here. Fuck, I can't even, I have to read it. I have to read the transcription here. The subtitles here on this portion are, "The rich don't need them, while the poor can't afford them." That's what literally what it says right now, but I just can't show the picture because it would just break terms of service. I can't show that. Can't show that. I can't fucking show that. Shit, I can't. I really can't show that. Look at this, okay? Young people think sex is a beautiful thing, so why don't we just go ahead and create AI sex power or, sex robots, okay? Continuing on. Oh, fuck, I can't show that. So it opened up in 1993. Yes. There are more than 200,000 sex shops in China. It's a booming industry. I can't show the picture. I can't show you. I cannot show you. There is literal stuff. I can't show you. I'm reading off of what the thing says here. I can't show you. The online market for sex toys is worth 18.9 billion yuan. I can't pronounce that. That's $2.9 billion. It's forecasted to be worth $9.1 billion by 2020. We are well past that. So back to this. We want to give our dolls personalities. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure. There's some heads. Okay, moving heads and stuff. That looks super creepy. Okay, we keep going. There's this. We're trying to make our dolls move for obvious reasons. Okay, let me skip ahead. Here's one. Now, this I should be able to show. Let me, I'm really taking a fucking risk, okay? They talk like this. And it talks back. Do you know who Trump is? Donald Trump was born 1946, New York City, blah, 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 blah. Now I have to pause. Okay, I got to go back. Okay, because they show some shit. Here it is. Okay, so when it's all dolled up, right? So it looks in the background when it's all dolled up. And then here, this was creepy as fuck looking, okay? All right. And then over here, I think they show, here's kind of like, it will better communicate with users. Now I have to pause it again. Yeah, they show some stuff. I'm so glad I fucking switched. And here they are making it. Here's the internals of it. And so that we come to the end. Look, if you want to go see this, okay, there is a BBC article. Again, I can drop the link later, drop it in well, can I drop this in Discord? I can probably drop this one in Discord. Yes, I don't think this would break terms of service. So you can hit Discord, pound Discord, or pound Discord, and you can get the link to this and you can watch the video for yourself. These things are being made. This is like 2020 shit, okay? So we're way past that. So the person in the Guardian article who's like, well, by 2025 or, in the next 10 years or whatever it is, we're going to see AI sex robots. No, man, we're there. We're there. And now this is going to lead into transhumanism. Why am I bringing this up? Because this is the path to transhumanism. When you start blurring the lines between organic biological humans and robots. And you do so through mechanisms like this. This is the technocratic movement in full display before us, playing out perfectly. So let me take a sip. Hey, everyone in chat. Chat's very active today, but I'm honestly, I'm ignoring all of you. I have to. Otherwise, we're never going to get through this stream. All right. Let's go back. Let's have a look at just a brief overview of what the technocratic movement is. Let me remove this. So again, just in case you're new here and you don't know what it is, very, very briefly, in the 1930s, someone named Howard Scott created this thing called the technocratic movement. The idea being that everything is information, including humans. Humans are no different than machines. Machines are no different than animals. Animals are no different than humans. It is all electric inputs and outputs. And so Howard Scott thought of the idea of creating machines to run the entire societies. And you would essentially be converted, your energy output would just be converted into energy bucks, which you would earn throughout your life as a universal basic income. And we could quantify all closed energy systems throughout their entire life cycle. And so we could replace politicians, federal governments, the dollar, things like this with just pure energy dollars. Think of Bitcoin. That's where Bitcoin came from. We are going to get into that quite soon. So we covered 1930s. We covered Margaret Mead, who got very chummy with Howard Scott. Margaret Mead then started to inject the ideology behind gender fluidity and evolution, because as soon as you start removing yourself from, say, a more spiritual viewpoint, and you start seeing everybody as energy inputs and outputs, electrical signals, then what is gender at that point? Gender is no longer required to be binary. It's actually a pretty consistent worldview if you want to just kind of, think about it from their perspective. It kind of does make sense. And so Margaret Mead used her influence across the scientific community. We covered that as well. She influenced a lot of important people in math, in psychology, in computers, etc., including people who created the first AI. She did a bunch of LSD and psychedelic experiments with the CIA along with her husband. We are going to be tying that in today's episode with Technocracy. That shit only continues. Then we go and we increase the movement as it plays out in, for example, Chile here, where they actually implemented this. This is a real room in Chile. What they did was they took people who were academically credentialed, mathematicians, scientists, etc. They put them in charge of the entire government. They created what would be a precursor to the internet at the time, even before ARPANET came out. And it actually worked for about a year, except it didn't really work because it pissed off so many of their citizens that they rolled in with tanks and overtook the government. However, the entire concept here is that you would just receive a flood of information coming in, all about numbers, energy input, output, etc. These mathematician scientists would do whatever calculations they would do, and then they would make decisions about production and outputs and stuff at a entire national level. Well, this didn't play out so well, etc. Okay, so that's kind of the underlying thing. And then in the last stream on Saturday, we covered how these kinds of movements kind of popped up in other ways. For example, what was it? Cybernetics. That's what it was. Cybernetics, cyborgs in the 50s and 60s were becoming more prominent in mainstream, kind of like the ethos, even in scientific communities. How can we merge people with machines? We talked about that. And so there's your start to the transhumanist movement. And so if we have a look, if we think now about that exact concept, let me pull up how this works. Just 1 second here. So what we have is this. Here we go. Julian Huxley and transhumanism. Now, Julian Huxley is Aldous Huxley's brother. And Aldous Huxley coined the term transhumanism. And Julian Huxley perpetuated it. The idea behind transhumanism, according to Julian Huxley, is that the species would evolve into something that is beyond human. And if you look at it from their perspective, Julian Huxley, let's have a look at Julian Huxley. Here we go. Wikipedia. Julian Huxley was kind of what you would consider an agnostic atheist, even by his own admission he was. And so he believed a lot in evolution. He was a big supporter of Charles Darwin. And so from his perspective, transhumanism made sense. Now, where this comes from, though, it's linked a lot to Aldous Huxley. And guess who Aldous Huxley was? One sec. Let me pull this up. Aldous Huxley is the author of Brave New World. Huh. Now let's take a pause on that. I want you to keep that in mind. If you don't know what Brave New World is, we're going to get into it just very briefly. We'll lightly touch on it. So Aldous Huxley, just like Margaret Mead, used the idea of technology to consider the idea that perhaps we could meld with technology, right? In 1951, Huxley popularized the term transhumanism from the view that humans should better themselves through science and technology, possibly including eugenics, but also importantly, the improvement of the social environment. Now, as it so happens, um, I wonder if I could find it here. No, here we go. Huxley, Julian Huxley was very involved in parapsychology. What is parapsychology? Huxley took interest in investigating the claims of parapsychology and spiritualism. He joined the Society of Psychical Research in 1928. After investigation, he found the field to be unscientific and full of charlatans. In 1934, he joined the International Institute of Psychical Research, but resigned after a few months due to its members' spiritualist bias and non-scientific approach to the subject. After attending seances, Huxley concluded that the phenomena could be explained either by natural causes or more usually by fraud. Huxley, Harold Dearden, and others were judges for a group formed by the Sunday Chronicle to investigate the materialization medium of Harold Evans. Harold Evans and Harold Dearden are an entirely different thing that we don't need to get into. During a seance, Evans was exposed as a fraud. He was caught masquerading as a spirit in a white nightshirt. He then wrote a foreword to The Psychology of the Occult. What's really strange to me is that Huxley kind of knew that there was this parapsychological element where people injected a belief system that didn't have a basis in reality, and he fought against that. But then at the same time, he had this concept of, hey, let's do eugenics. It seems kind of like it's almost a diametrically opposed set of views, because on the one hand, how on earth could you make a case that something like this is bad and therefore fraud if you can't even make the case for what bad is? It seems to be kind of a weird state of things. However, it is logically consistent with this kind of a worldview because it's illogical. Does that make sense? The illogical ideas that play against each other are actually logically consistent to have within this worldview. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but that's kind of what I took away from that. So in any case, we have a very well-known person, Julian Huxley and Aldous Huxley, who start talking about transhumanism, the idea of integrating with machines and so on, and cyborgs and stuff like that. So we're still in the 50s and 60s and whatnot. And so here we have Aldous Huxley. This is kind of a book about the book, right? Essentially what the book is, let me just see if I can go over here. Let me make sure this is not the thing I'm looking for. Here we go. This is what we want. This is what I want to read. So now that we know that, If you think about 1984, if you know what that book is, 1984 was a warning about how society is essentially controlled through fear. There's a punishment that happens. And so people kind of like report each other and work against each other, work against each other because they fear the punishment of the kind of like the big brother watching over them with all the data and whatnot. However, Brave New World is a little bit different. Brave New World kind of takes that and says, what if everybody opted into that? What if everybody loved the enslavement and they wanted it and they asked for it and they like participated in it of their own volition, more or less, right? And so it's a little bit of a different take on the 1984 book, but it essentially comes to the same conclusion. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read this article and we're going to just start tying this in together, and then we're going to start moving the timeline forward. Okay, we're going to move the timeline forward just a little bit. So here we go. Let's get into it. Transhumanism and the future of humanity towards digital slavery. I've brought up digital slavery before. We're not quite there yet, but I will show you how digital slavery, digital enslavement, is a term that is being used in modernity today, and I will show you exactly how. Let's read, because this article is actually pretty good. This is from Daily Saba. I don't know who this person is. They seem to have a whole bunch of different articles, but I thought that this article did a very good job summarizing a lot of the historical stuff that I found, and it just did it much better than me. So here we go. In the 19th century, a society called X Club was founded by a group of scientists in England. The X in the title of the club, where Charles Darwin gave lectures from time to time, symbolized change and evolution according to his esoteric beliefs. The most famous members of the club, also known as X-Men, were socialist Darwinist Herbert Spencer and biologist Thomas Henry Huxley. In fact, Huxley was the one who asked Darwin to pen the theory of evolution he had shaped in his mind for years. Are you starting to see the patterns starting to converge? Are you seeing them? Along with the theory of evolution, Darwin introduced the notion of Kabbalah. Gare Games, you there, bro? Yo, Gare Games. That the human mind would develop into a god as a result of evolution. To the world of science, and he built the infrastructure of this belief among scientists. The club, supported by capitalists with very strong connections, chose the scientists of the time who believed in creation and ensured that the theory of evolution was accepted by the public. The theory of evolution began to appear in textbooks in England. Huxley was the member who demonstrated the most effort in the lectures and conferences he gave. Inspired by Darwin and examinations of his ideas, German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Holy shit, the lines that are being intersected here. You didn't think that the technocratic movement would have lines with such amount of intersection, did you? And yet they do, because as I said before, people bring in their belief systems and ideological structures into the very things that we're talking about today. He introduced the idea of Übermensch, or Superman, taking humanity to the next stage in evolution in the eugenic sense. A word I can't say, who was a fan of Nietzsche and saw himself as a Superman, began to work toward creating a superior race. You know who that is. The scientists who carried out these studies in Germany moved to the US following World War II and established the Cybernetics Group under the control of the CIA. I will be getting into who these people are. As a matter of fact, okay, I'm not going to bring that up just yet, all right? I can't really bring that up until the next one. I'll bring it up in the next one, okay? But let's just say that there is evidence to suggest, okay, that there were people who were of a particular party during the Second World War in Germany who were then brought over to America, and they instituted the Cybernetics Group. If you know who the Cybernetics Group is, it's probably because you watched my last stream. Robert Wiener. Cybernetics. Okay, he created cybernetics. In any case, let's keep going. They would no longer be focused on race, but on medicine and technology. And I just want you to remember, Margaret Mead, as well as her husband, were involved with the CIA doing all kinds of psychological and psychedelic experiments. I just want you to remember that. And they were deeply embedded in technocracy. As a matter of fact, they were friends with the founder of technocracy. I want you to remember that. Big Brother. The Fabian Society in England wanted to establish the socialist New World Order under the control of the capitalists. However, they did not want to do it the same way as in Soviet Russia. Instead, they sought to carry out revolutions using an evolutionist approach. The members of the society did not remove Nietzsche's work from their bedside. This society, which involved Huxley's science fiction student H.G. Wells, included two famous writers. These writers, who put forward two dystopias, that is, two visions of the future world, were George Orwell and Huxley's grandson Aldous Huxley. In both Orwell's 1984 and Huxley's Brave New World, the world is ruled by a certain party, a certain class. The concept of family disappears. Are we seeing that play out right now, maybe? Is the concept of family disappearing today, maybe? And a socialist order dominates society. The main difference between the two novels is that people in 1984 are forcibly enslaved by the party, while the characters love slavery in Brave New World. If you have not read those two books, I highly recommend you go read those two books. Huxley not only wrote the novel, but also went to the US and participated in the work to create a Superman with the team there. I'm going to be covering that as well. Let me just make sure I don't have... Pull this up. Nope, I don't have it. I'm saving that. There's a thread I'm pulling. I'm trying to be careful about the threads I pull. Okay, we're going to get into that later. And so here we have Thomas Henry Huxley with Julian Huxley, who we talked about in 1893, while Aldous Huxley was conducting research on LSD. Interesting. To control the human mind in the US, kind of like, I don't know, Margaret Mead as well? I don't know, maybe, just maybe. His brother Julian Huxley introduced the term transhumanism to the literature in his book, Religion Without Revelation. Transhumanism, or humanity plus, is a term used to describe people going beyond their current physical and mental limits through science and technology. According to transhumanists, since human evolution has stopped, it was necessary to push it forward using machines and drugs. One of Julian's favorite friends, who was also the first UNESCO director, was the Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Teilhard was known as the Catholic Darwin. He was a leading actor in the Piltdown Man fraud, in which the human skull and orangutan jaw were combined to demonstrate the transitional form in evolution, a development that went down in history as a scandal. Desjardins believed that the minds of all people would unite at a higher level of consciousness, which he called the noosphere meaning mind sphere. Studies in the US bore fruit in short time. How? Interesting. Personal computers brought the internet into our lives, and the ubiquitous triple dub, which can be read as 3 was, meaning 666 in Hebrew, which is also the sign of the Antichrist according to the Bible. Look, I don't know about this, okay? This is kind of a stretch, all right? I'm just reading the article. I'm not gonna lie, all right? There's a little bit of a stretch here, all right? This is, okay? I'm just reading the article. I'm just gonna be honest here. I'm not 100%, In any case, let's keep reading. PCs have replaced the drug LSD. That I can get behind to a certain degree. Okay, there's a limit there, but I can get behind that. The network, which the Jesuit Desjardins called the noosphere, whatever, and H.G. Wells called the world brain, was thus brought to life through computers and other electronic devices. A painting by John Cook shows the group portrait of the pit-down skulls being examined. Now, all the conversations we have over the internet, all the messages and pictures we send, all the preferences we click, that is all information that introduces us better than ourselves, collected by big data, and the god of transhumanism will take its place at the top of the pyramid, okay? Although they have esoteric beliefs, transhumanists do not believe in the soul, and instead they see the human brain as a machine, just like Technocracy in the magazine that we read at the very beginning of the Technocratic series of streams that I've done, also believe. They believe immortality will be possible by transferring the human mind to servers or other bodies' machines. Gee, have we heard that anywhere before? There are agnostics in this community, as well as atheists like Max Moore, the head of the Alcor Society, who deals with cryonics in order to resurrect people in the future through tech. In his article entitled, "In Praise of the Devil," Moore says, Lucifer means light bringer, and now we're getting into Gnosticism, where the entirety of the Bible is flipped. Satan is really God, and God is really the devil. The story is that God threw Lucifer out of heaven because Lucifer had started to question God. Lucifer is the embodiment of reason, of intelligence, of critical thought. He stands against the dogma of God and all other dogmas. He stands for the explorations of new ideas. God also hates it when we enjoy ourselves. If we let ourselves experience too much pleasure, then we might lose interest in obeying him. Join me, join Lucifer, and join Extropy in fighting God and his entropic forces with our minds, our wills, and our courage. We will be going into Extropy again. Let me make sure I have my notes. We're good there. No notes there. Okay. Cyborgs. Gee, it's almost like I planned this whole thing. Cyborgs. Today, many projects are carried out by transhumanists with the aim of transforming people. Since there are still places in the world that do not have internet and electricity, Google's X company and Facebook are spending millions of dollars to ensure that those who do not have water to drink can benefit from the blessing that is the internet. Former ex-employee Mary Lou Jepsen is striving to develop an MRI machine that can be worn as a beanie and read minds. Elon Musk, the owner of SpaceX, is working on Neuralink, in which chips and electrodes will be added to the brain and body to connect us to the network like computers. DARPA Research and Development Agency, which serves the U.S. Army, is experimenting with cyborg soldiers with chips in their brains. This is why I went over the General Electric walking robot, because the U.S. Naval Research Center was already paying the General Electric in, I believe, the late 1960s, early 1970s, and we saw the video of it. They are already trying to integrate man with machine many, many years ago. We're talking like 50, 60, 70 years ago. This has been happening for a long time. It only continues. The X Prize Foundation of Transhumanists also organizes competitions in the hopes of reaching the new world as soon as possible. What is the new world? You can all guess what the new world is. The brave new world order. We have stepped into the new world with new advents like robots, genetic engineering, virtual reality, brain and space exploration, nanotech, artificial intelligence, cybernetics, synthetic biology, to name a few. Esoterics who were unable to evolve spiritually due to being on the wrong path, aka you and me, are realizing it physically and synthetically through technology, almost like a magician. Well, what will we do when the day comes that a chip is implanted into our brain like in the Matrix, or when drugs in the movies like Lucy and Limitless are introduced into the market? Will we resist, or will we form queues in front of stores like when a new phone model comes out with the Apple? I believe the second possibility will become a reality, of course, because we all love tech, don't we? We all love it when Apple has glass, as part of their new thing. We all line up and we buy it, right? Right? Okay, so now let's take a look. Let me see here. Let's take a look at a couple of things. I just want to bring very quick attention. Okay. Technocracy has been used to inject these ideologies into the technical landscape, whether they are conservative or not, whether they are transhumanist or not, whether they are based in the Christian religion or whatever or not. Okay, all of these ideologies are being used via technology to be kind of imposed on you in a variety of ways, and it always comes down to power. And people with information and whatever want power. You can see here, Laura Micheletti, I believe is the pronunciation, Puaka, goes into how technocratic feminism and politics were being kind of played against each other in a way between 1940s and 1980s. We already covered how Margaret Mead was a big influence in that. When second wave feminism was taking place, there were calls being made to the technocratic movement. I can't read the whole book because I don't have access to it. I'm going to have to go find it somewhere else and go get it and actually read it. But there are lots of these kinds of articles, newspaper clippings that I found, and other novels that point to the exactly this kind of a scenario where we want to import feminism, second wave, third wave feminism. We're just going to keep pulling on that thread as we go in. We're going to keep tackling religious and non-religious ideas, Gnosticism, atheism, doesn't matter. You can again see how these are like Trojan horses to bundle in. Hey, isn't it cool what tech can do? Yeah, there are nerds like you and me out there who go, really, really cool. This is, I mean, you can write code and you can make it like do calculate, like, you know, our minds are blown by that. We love it. We love doing this stuff. And then it's like, hey, why don't you inject some of that feminism, bro? Just one more hit of feminism, bro. Okay, just one more feminism, bro. Just one more Gnosticism, bro. Okay? Just one more Gnosticism set of bites, bro. Okay, please, bro. Just one more, bro. Just one for the road, bro. That's how this stuff happens, all right? So this stuff has been going on for a long time. Now, let me pull up. Let me find the right one. Here we go. Wait, no, that's not it. My bad. If I go like blah 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 here, yeah, we'll get into the communities. Here we go. This one. That's the one I'm looking for. What we're going to do is we're going to take a brief look and we're going to kind of tie off a lot of the 1960s and 1970s. And we're going to see how some of these systems implemented what we're going to get into with the 1980s. So we're going to close off a bit of this timeline. We will reference back to it as we go into 80s and 90s in the next stream. But let's have a look at this one. This is a study. It's a special report from the MRS and the Royal Statistical Society. Now, as we go into it, they go into a very deep study of how, let's say, data. It's data, how data was used in a technological format to kind of give rise to statistics and analytics and the ability for people to use that to kind of impose their whatever their will is. So let's continue. So let's go down 1936, 1954, 1957. We've talked a lot about a lot of the inventions that were used during this time that came up as a result of, you know, these times. So we're just going to keep going. Let me go down here. I believe it's right around here, 1969, 1971. Now, right around here, okay. Where the heck is it? Here we go. Let's read this a bit. Seeing is the new asking. That's what Steven Gaughan's chief insights and analytics officer at PepsiCo constantly tells his colleagues. If you ask a mother or you ask a dad, what do you give your kid in his lunchbox that he takes to school? You can predict what the answer is going to sound like, says Gaughan's, because the dad wants to be seen as a responsible dad. So there's some fruit, there's some this, there's some that. But by recording what actually happens using 24/7 cameras in people's kitchens, analyzed by artificial intelligence, researchers found that one conscientious father packed his son's lunchbox every day with carrots, fruits, and so on, and every day the boy came home with his lunchbox completely intact. The child found eating all those carrots took up too much valuable playtime, and he bought something quick to eat instead. You would have never learned that from the dad, says Gans. This, in a nutshell, is the problem with asking questions. People might tell you what they believe to be true or what they want to be true. The actual truth, though, may elude even the most diligent of interviewers. This is the irrational decisions that humans make. This is why, for example, you can't have an AI system that perfectly replicates a human, because you would then have to necessarily ask the AI system to act irrationally in order to behave like a human, even though it knows better from a rational standpoint, which makes the idea of having human-aligned, valued AIs next to impossible, if not actually impossible. But here we go. Henry Durant, the first president of the Market Research Society, knew of these problems with survey-based data collection and warned about them in the 1950s. As we learned in some previous article that we don't have to read, as technology had developed and the data economy had evolved, seeing has become the new asking. Gee, does this sound familiar? John Ward, vice president of sales EMEA at eye tracking company Tobii, offers another example of direct observation being more informative than asking questions. A lot of people will say they're not price sensitive and then completely demonstrate price sensitive behavior when they are not being asked, because it's like saying, are you cheap? Of course I'm not cheap. Wearing Toby's compact cameras, shoppers can go into physical stores and shop normally. With every detailed record for analysis, you see them go in, says Ward, and yes, they 100% are cheap. In the age of store cards and barcodes, collecting data on what people eventually buy is easy, but eye tracking analysis also reveals that the moment their eyes stop on the competitor brands, the two bottles they pick up, and even the glance between price per 100 ml on both brands, that clinches the deal. Analyzing what people look at online is easier still when volunteers put eye tracking cameras above their screens and give the researchers access to what they're viewing. Mike Follett, managing director at eye tracking company Lumen, thinks implicit observation techniques share three key advantages over asking questions explicitly. The first one is people don't know what they don't do. He says it is very hard to know that you definitely didn't see something. Given the fact that attention is selective, we have been ignoring the vast majority of human experience to focus on explicitly remembered actions and opinions. The second advantage is that people are very bad at accurately remember the things that they actually did do or see, even in situations as important as giving evidence in court. The third advantage, says Follett, is that when it comes to marketing, ads might be developed in isolation, but they're also seen in context. So making sure you serve up the experience to be as close to reality as possible, and then understand how attention works with that reality is very important. Although 21st century technology allows observations to be filmed by cameras smaller than your thumb and analyzed by machine learning algorithms, implicit observation has its roots in methods from the 20th century and before. The first eye tracking was done by a human looking through a flap in a hoarding, hand sketching where passersby were looking. From the 1950s, behaviorist approaches became more popular as a way to understand human beings. Polymath Herbert Simon brought together his interests in psychology, economics, and computing to develop, let me see where it goes up here, the idea that simply observing what people do is a better guide to what they will do in the future than asking them explicitly. We may be rational, but our rationality is bounded by the finite amount of time and attention we have to spend. Today's data-driven consumer insight combines the kind of individual observation described above with aggregated data to see overall trends and behaviors. Media monitoring, the observation of what consumers are looking at, listening to, or reading, is as old as media. Every newspaper adverts offer discount coupons to find out how many readers of different newspapers paid enough attention to the advert to cut them out and use them. Nielsen, a research study group, a very popular one, found in 1923, pioneered automatic monitoring of a household's radio and television habits. Yes, in 1923, Nielsen was tracking your household radio and television habits. You think this advertising subscription tracking your data shit is new? No, man. This shit has been happening with tech since 1923, supplemented by diaries to track individuals within a household. They also pioneered indexes of retail sales data in the 1930s, combined with panels of consumers who recorded and later scanned their actual purchases, enabling advertisers to compare adverts seen with goods bought. Early point-of-system sales enabled larger stores and chains to track what was being bought directly. When American chain JCPenney first installed cash registers linked to mainframe computers at its distribution center in 1969, as well as speeding up customer transactions, the Arizona Republic reported the Glendale store manager knew, day by day, just what merchandise was being sold and how much. 1969! After the invention of the barcode in 1971, chains such as Walmart could track goods in enough detail to predict demand. Tesco was the first to offer shoppers a direct trade of discounts of data in 1995. Sign up for a club card and get targeted offers in return for letting the retailer observe your shopping habits. In the first year, 5 million people signed up. Edwina Dunn and Clive Humby, who devised and ran the club card, eventually sold their data company, Dunn Humby, to Tesco for more than 90 million euros, and that's in 1995-ish dollars. In the 1970s, marketing databases began to merge with another rich source of data. Oh, yummy! The credit report. Since the early 19th century, merchants have exchanged information on their customers to predict which ones might be a bad risk for settling their bills. The Manchester Guardian Society, founded in London in 1826, merged with mail-order giant GUS in 1996, and eventually became part of international credit bureau and data broker Experian. Does that sound familiar to anyone? A similar process saw American credit bureau Equifax expand into the field of marketing by acquiring data companies and demographic modeling software. Now, it could segment people not only into creditworthy and uncreditworthy, but also into marketing categories such as an upper crust and living off the land. Geodemographics, the ability to sort people into demographics and consumer categories linked to where they lived, emerged in the 1970s from newly available computer-readable census information. The Claritas Corporation, founded in 1971, sorted Americans into 40 types. And here we have intersectionality at its roots, including money and brains and hard Scrabble. Meanwhile, in the UK, social scientist Richard Webber used the 1971 census to study inner city deprivation in Liverpool. His classification of residential neighborhoods (CRN) system formed the basis for the ACORN system, later used by data company Cocky. The social segmentation used experimental work being done within companies and independent agencies. And then it goes into the 1970s and 80s, which we will get into. And so at this point, what's happening is that the people behind these kinds of movements are beginning to see that there is a future for them. And that future includes this kind of transhumanist, technocratic movement. And so, as part of their awareness that there would be a pushback on their ability to implement this and make it happen. This is from the CBC. Since the 60s, countercultures have subverted mainstream tech to connect and build community. The Macintosh computer was considered the new LSD. Although hippies rejected the military-industrial complex, many embraced the idea of the world in which material reality could be imagined as an information system. And so this article talks about, in particular, Silicon Valley. In the 60s, says Professor Fred Turner, a professor at communications at Stanford University, we had the Vietnam War, we had civil rights, we had enormous conflicts, and particularly college students growing up in that period did not want to grow up to fight the Vietnam War and did not want to grow up to be the kind of people that would prosecute that kind of a war. Meantime, though, they didn't want to let go of the beautiful technologies and the kind of utopian dreams that the industrial complex had also brought about. And at the same time, the family was being deconstructed, and you had the feminist movement starting to come into full force. You had all kinds of other ideologies that were starting to break out as a result of, the psychedelic movements around the time. That's why they talked about like the hippies around that time, and so on and so forth. They were meant to create a kind of disembodiment where people were interconnected and at peace and didn't get trapped in conflict. And so he goes on to talk about how there was this kind of like opposing, like kind of cognitive dissonance in people's brains. On the one hand, we like what technology can do for us and can kind of bring us into. And, the reason why is because, well, it kind of aligns with our, everybody's an interchangeable widget kind of a thing, and we can live in peace together, etc. Now, as it so happens, there's a counterculture that starts to stand up, and the counterculture starts to try and create their own little ecosystem to prove that something is true. Like this one. This was one of the first technocratic countercultures, where the people got together and said, hey, we can do this. F everybody else, we can do this. And you can see the kind of counterculture that stands up. It seems to have started as a result of 60s and 70s from people who were kind of like, let's say, more on that general aspect of beliefs and cultural background, where they believe in the fluidity of gender and things like this. And so they start adopting technological frameworks as a mechanism by which to employ control and create a counterculture. And as technology gets better and better, which we just went over with things like data tracking and whatnot, and it just continues to get better, you start heading towards some weird mix of 1984 and Brave New World. Now, to continue with this, okay, we have we have this article, 1960s Counterculture and Personal Computing. So he talks about the same thing here. We have the Vietnam War. It ignited counterculture movements. Then you have ARPANET, which conveniently comes online at the time. And then you have LSD and ARPANET having substantial ties to government funding and research. We've already covered this. We've already covered how people with this kind of ideological background primarily were the ones who pushed for the creation and the use of technological improvements for a variety of different reasons, and they were indeed funded by the government. Okay, both exploded as potential tools to gain advantage during the Cold War. In cities like San Francisco and New York, the CIA established secret locations known as safe houses where LSD experiments would be conducted. And so we kind of know about this kind of stuff. I don't really need to get into that too much. However, this is something very interesting. Early computer pioneers like Douglas Engelbart were inspired by the idea of expanding their minds. Engelbart was influenced by Vannevar Bush, who talked about a Memex machine to store and find information easily back in 1945. The Memex, short for memory extender, was envisioned as a device that would augment an individual's memory by making it easy to store, categorize, and retrieve information. Engelbart amazed people in 1968 with his mother of all demos, showing off things like the computer mouse, graphical user interfaces, hypertext, video conferencing, and collaborative computing. Engelbart's work at the Stanford Research Institute inevitably connected him to various government-funded projects. However, there's no evidence to suggest a direct personal involvement with the CIA or covert or operations. There are accounts of Engelbart experimenting with LSD under sanctioned experiments at the SRI, but it was mostly exploring potential to enhance creativity and problem solving. We have Engelbart here with the mother of all demos. Here he is practicing for it, and you can see the first mouse as designed by Bill English and Douglas Engelbart. Imagine this. Imagine this is your mouse. Check it, boys. Look at that. Look at the first mouse. Okay. And so we have kind of like the opening door, right, at the late 1960s of the creation of like the computers as we know them today. However, Steve Jobs did experiment with LSD. He said so in his own biography, and several others apparently have as well. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there seems to be an overlap between people who hold these kinds of ideologies and have these kinds of backgrounds where they experiment in, say, like more non-theistic backgrounds, the worship of Lucifer, etc. Not completely. There are others of Christian backgrounds. We'll get into that. Don't worry. But at this point in time, it seems that the kind of people who have primarily held the reins of this type of movement are people who experiment with psychedelics and have these kinds of like, hey man, spirituality sucks, man. Don't be spiritual, man. God sucks, man. Family sucks, man. We're all the same, man. We're no different than a computer, man. And they experiment with stuff, and then they get ingrained into the scientific community. They get ingrained into the technical community. They start building machines, and the reason why they start building machines looks very fucking suspicious when you start thinking about why a technocratic system would need a bunch of machines. And lo and behold, the people who love technocracy build the machines that help them create the system that they want to build. Like, it starts to look super sketch, right? All right, now we're gonna end with this one. Let's see if I can find it correctly. Yeah, this one right here. I got to pull it up correctly. This will be the last article. Oh, crap, come on. Here we go. Okay. Bits of cities. Okay, I had to download this from an archived HTML article. And so that's why some of the pictures are gone. This is from a from the University of Hawaii, Manoa. And it's kind of like a semi-study, kind of essay of sorts, an academic essay into some of the stuff that was happening around the time that we're looking at, that we're now closing off. And now we're going to start pulling this thread on the utopian visions and social power in place-based and electronic communities. So what the hell is this? In the 19th century, when industrial cities spewed smoke and ash over cramped city dwellings, middle-class visionaries dreamed of green country towns with easy commute to city businesses. 15-minute cities, anyone? Working-class visionaries dreamed of a communal social order that would reward them fairly for their labor and shelter them in old age. In the 1960s, when suburban life was widely, even if inaccurately, portrayed as dull sameness, middle-class utopians dreamed of a place where they could discover their own identities, get back to nature, and live in peace with like-minded others. In the late 20th century, when information-enhanced corporate competitiveness in a globalized economy threatens to increase the gap between rich and poor and obliterate the middle class, and when place-based community life is eroding, some visionaries advance utopian dreams of a new world. Cyberspace, where people can organize online systems to support democracy, empower work, and enrich human relationships. We draw upon a rich history of Californian utopian community experiments to provide an experiential base for better understanding the possibilities of social life in cyberspace. As it so happens, in the 19th century, California was the site of a few dozen diverse utopian political experiments. These old utopian communities were organized through diverse forms such as socialist and Fourierist. Life in these communities usually entailed hard work and simple living. They were relatively frugal and isolated from the conveniences of late 19th century. And so it continues. You can kind of see the types of, you can imagine the utopian societies that they wanted to create. The Summer of Love in 1967 brought thousands of young people to San Francisco. Soon, Haight-Ashbury hippie subculture and associated venues, such as the Fillmore Auditorium, became cultural icons that were sometimes cherished and often despised elsewhere in North America. In this period, North California residents and immigrants established many small intentional communities. So they would take a plot of land, maybe like what was it? Chop? Was it Chop? Was it Chat? I can't remember what it was. And so they would just create their own communities and they would just section it off and go, yeah, this is ours now. We're going to do our own thing. Okay. So they tried this in a number of different ways and ultimately they kind of failed. Now, what's interesting, others envision an Electro-Irvine or an online Disneyland, a technologically enhanced version of the planned communities and theme parks that dominate Orange County, California. Among them, they variously describe cyberspace as a place where democracy can prevail, where individuals can achieve full expression, or as a place where streamlined distribution efficiencies can be achieved, middlemen can be eliminated, and direct communication can take place. The motivating themes of these discussions echo the sentiments of early utopian quests. And like those earlier visions, they spring from, and strongly depend upon social and commercial contexts in the physical world. So some colonies were created as early as the 1930s. It goes through to the late 1900s. So we have things like 1960s, 1970s, and so on. There was the Federation of Egalitarian Communities. Didn't really work out. In 1966, they had another one. Harris Gottlieb had one of like alternative lifestyles. Didn't really work out. They go over them. But there were some here that were based on the technical aspect, the technocratic aspect, where they wanted to kind of section themselves off from people judging them for wanting to have a technocratic system. And so they attempted to do what was done here, but in a smaller place in California. And when that started to happen, let's see if I can find it down here. When that started to happen, you have something called cyber utopianism. It's a cyber utopia. Okay? They depicted cyber life using a technological utopianism. Technological utopianism places the use of some specific technology, computers, nuclear energy, or low energy, low impact technologies, as the central enabling element of a utopian vision. Sometimes people will causally refer to exotic technologies like pocket computers that understand spoken language as utopian gadgets. Technological utopianism does not refer to a set of technologies. It refers to analyses in which the use of the technologies play a key role in shaping a utopian social vision in which their use easily makes life enchanting and liberating for everyone. Technocracy. So as they continue this cyber utopia kind of world, okay, they start to flesh it out, the ideas, what it would mean, everyday media, how people would have relationships in the cyber utopia, how would technological gadgets play out. And then there's an enthusiastic rendition of the digital breakfast. If your refrigerator notices you're out of milk, it can ask your car to remind you to pick up some on your way home. Appliances today have all too little computing. A toaster should not be able to burn toast. It should be able to talk to other appliances. It should really be quite simple to brand your toast in the morning with the closing price of your favorite stock. But first, the toaster needs to be connected to the news. As early as 1995, this concept of Internet of Things and tracking your data and integrating everything, all of this stuff, the 1984 verse Brave New World, all of it starts to show up in Silicon Valley in big ways. And the idea of the cyber utopia starts to pop up. And next thing you know, people start talking about creating their own little communities, which they attempt to create. And just to show you, let me pull this up. I'll just show you how this will end it here. Let me see, Jacques Fresco, Venus, the Venus Project. Let me find the right. Let me find the right one. Hang on. Professional streamer. Okay, right here. So this guy, Jacques Fresco, was part of the technocratic movement. And you can see that here we have a utopia, a cyber utopia, as part of the Venus Project. And the Venus Project exists today. And the concept here is, as you can see in the pictures, here's some concepts. Favors scientific method as a source of explanation, relies on engineering, coordinates people to transcend national borders, yada, yada, yada. All the stuff we hear with technocracy, all of that stuff. A world without artificial scarcity, yada, yada. And it's this kind of, it's this kind of society, if you look at it here, it's its own cyber utopia. That's what these people are hoping for. And here, Jacques Fresco, the founder himself, states that he is part of the technocratic movement. I wonder if I can do closed captioning here and just Crap, I can't find it, but it's in here. It's in this video. He says that he was in the technocratic movement when it, oh yeah, right at the beginning. Talking about the past, I was a member of Technocracy. Okay, and they said they had blueprints for the future, but when I asked for those blueprints, I never saw them, and everything was kind of murky and blah, 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 blah. They only had a rough outline. And so here I am with the Venus Project, creating my cyber utopia. So now we reach we've kind of tied off everything up to the 1970s. In the next stream, we're going to get into 1980s and 1990s, and that'll be a bit more compressed because there was a bit less happening. And we should be able to get through that in one stream, I think. But we're going to have to now start making references to all this stuff. There's a lot of threads. And man, when we start getting into the 90s, you're in for a mind fuck. Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s, you're in for a mind fuck. So that's it. That's what I have. All right. Thank you all the follows. I saw some follows. I'm not sure if there was anybody who sent in a super chat. I can't tell. I might have missed it. Let me see. Let me make sure. I don't see anything. I don't know. Maybe it was just a follow. If I missed financial contribution, I apologize. The follows and stuff, I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. If you want to, you can hop on Discord. I will be on probably later, not exactly right away, but I'll be on later for sure. I'll hang out with you guys. And that's it. That's it. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. That's the best way. That's the best way to support me and my work, and get this information out to more people. And as long as you guys keep supporting me, I'll keep going, because I think this information is crucial. I want you guys to understand that this stuff has been playing out long before you and I were in this field. And I just want to really see this field not get taken over by stupid ideas, regardless of where they come from. I want us to focus on the craft, and the craft itself is independent of these kind of like ideological ideas. So that's why I talk about this stuff. So we're going to get into it. It's wild. It's a wild ride. And I just want you to remember, I love my family. Okay. I love life. Things could be maybe just a little bit better, but that's about it. Okay. All right. I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate all the financial support, but I also appreciate everybody doing the free stuff. Please, 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 if you haven't, just do like, sub, repost, reshare, the follows, all that stuff, right? Please do that. It's free and it helps me out. Anyways, I'll be back tomorrow. I might have to take a break so I can catch up and piece together some daily tech news stuff. It takes a lot of effort to put this together. I was up until like 4 a.m. last night. It's a lot of work. So I appreciate you guys, hanging out for, I don't even know how long the stream was, but one way or another, 2.5 hours, one way or another, I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe we'll do a video game stream. I don't know. And Discord later. We'll be on Discord later. You guys are welcome to hop on Discord without me. You don't have to have me on there. You can just go on and start chatting with each other. I will come on later, I promise. All right. I just might want to do dinner or something first. Okay. Let me make sure that I don't have anybody that I need to take you guys over to. Let me see who's on. Otherwise, I'm just going to end the stream. Okay, on the YouTube side, I will move you guys over to someone. Okay, so I'll save that. On the Twitch side, though, do I have anybody that I care to have you guys go over? Because there's so much degeneracy on Twitch, man. Thanks, Arkar. I appreciate it, brother. Nah, there's no one. Okay, so on the YouTube side, you guys will get to go over to EOD. He's a cool guy. He's streaming. Hopefully he's still streaming when I end. Peace out, everybody. You guys are awesome. I will catch you later and or tomorrow. Stay safe out there. Thanks for sticking it out. I know this stuff can be boring and annoying and long sometimes. I'm trying my best to rush through it. Still giving it justice. You guys are great. Peace out. By the way, I almost forgot. I got a bunch of technocrats together in the room, and there's a list of people in chat who are allowed to join the cyber utopia, the upcoming cyber utopia. Arakar, I didn't know you were on it, but now I do. Here's the list of people in chat who are allowed to join the upcoming cyber utopia, but the only reason why you're allowed to join it is because you suck. Specious, you suck. Erikar, you suck. Laughfully, you suck. Not you, it's me, you suck. Quad, you suck. Lem, you suck. Evil Eye, you suck. Allergen TMX, you suck. Sophie, you know what, Sophie? I'm feeling nice. Sophie, you're pretty cool. I kind of, you're honestly, you're really nice and you're cool and stuff. So just to be nice to you today, you don't suck, okay? You don't suck, Sophie. You get a pass. I like you. You know, because you constantly show up and you're constantly cool and nice about stuff, right? So you don't suck today, Sophie. You get a pass. But Frank, you suck. All right? Alpha, Beta, you suck. Birds aren't real. You suck. Okay? Laughing Panda, you suck. Okay? Let's see who else sucks. Pabalo, you suck. All he did was come in and go, bro. That's it. That's all he said. Gare Games, you suck. Let's see who else sucks. Shit. I gotta go up. I can't. Frozen, you suck. Okay, all you do is come in and like send a Nix, you suck. Okay, Pepito, you suck. Shit, come on. I got this. I can do this. Come on, I can get you guys into the cyber utopia. Okay, that's all I got. That's it. That's all I got. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Chief Multi-Hat, you suck. Chief Multi-Hat, you suck twice today. Okay? You're gonna have to go watch the live. Okay? Peace out, everybody. See you on Discord or see you tomorrow.